going on record now, so I'm just gonna we are more or less ready. I've got it. I've just got to do the last thing online. I do believe Andy's just joined us.
Yeah.
Andy, did you get Opsy book?
I did, thank you very much. Yes, it was very kind of you to drop it off. I shall be starting it soon.
Oh, I thought you'd have finished it by now.
Well, I've got to finish the one I'm on. I can't just drop everything, you know, just because of Otzi.
Hang on a minute. How
Got
dare
one
you,
more
Margaret,
chapter to do.
Oh,
exactly. And you know, Andy's going out saving lives. He's on the edge of the world. You know.
Yeah.
You know, he's
busy this weekend.
He's trying to save the world, based in Switzerland. All the oceans around Switzerland. He's trying to save people. Don't say Switzerland is landlocked. You've missed the point. Right. So I am slowly getting this sorted out now, and we will be ready to do intros and stuff. And I do believe that the world is my oyster, and you are the ones that I influence every single week. And my love is undoubtedly with you as the moment in time does not pass. Past the April into May, a new beginning, a new summer approaches.
and the next subs, I presume, are approaching.
Well, yeah, I got to be honest with you, right? Oh, by the way, I will accidentally show you a little bit of a video about an excavation that is. We're doing some trialing here. And what I assumed was here, I was right. We've got a missing something in Welsh history, but I can't tell you anything about it until we excavate part of the site next year. But nevertheless, Adam might know a little bit more about it before anybody else, because he's going to come down and help. But Adam is special, and he needs to be looked after. That's why I need to have a chat with him afterwards. Right. Okay. So I do believe we are ready to do this today. So I would like to know. We're going to go around people, and I'm going to put myself on the video chat as well. We also, I've got a couple of announcements to make as well. And also we've got a little bit of news I want us to do from Lisbon in Portugal as well. So what I'd like to do is start off with mentioning Drina. I know Margaret and Anne have mentioned a couple of things about Drina. Drina will be out of action for a little bit longer. But I would say that what we have been doing with Drina, we've been sending copious notes in the post to her, and what we're going to do now is we're going to send links to her via email, and links to the online classes. So if anyone does mention Drina's going to know about it, right? If you want to send your love to Drina now, she will know about it. Right?
Have you got the address that she's staying at rather than a home address?
No, but the thing is, I'll be doing this via. We've got an email, so I don't.
It's going to my mail. It's okay. It's because I've been sending a mail. I've been going to her house and collecting and sending it to her. But
we do really appreciate you doing that. And I got to be honest with you, if you weren't all involved in our archaeological doings, you know, you probably wouldn't be part of Drina's life. So there you go.
That's true.
It's true. So right. So that's Drina. We're sending her our deepest, unrequited love. I think that's right, isn't it? And hopefully,
I think it's requited. I think it is requited.
I said requited, didn't I?
You said unrequited. I think it is requited.
I thought, she won't know what I mean anyway. It's requited. You know, in other words, we're sending Drina our love, right? And that's it. Okay.
That's fine.
I've dug myself a hole. I'm getting out of it. We love Drina. Say a little bit more about something else.
I haven't got anything else to talk about except I've had a rotten day and it's feeling better now, and I don't want to think about it anymore.
Good answer. Good on you.
All right. And that was great. It's a better answer than we get from Anne on a Wednesday. Mind you, I gotta announce that Anne on a Wednesday does have a new washing machine now, so that's good. Right, okay then. Margaret, anything you'd like to tell us, darling?
No, I've just fished. I've been looking in my library. I'm going to miss that when it goes. And at the moment, I've got The Farming of Prehistoric Britain.
Ooh.
All right, good.
There's a lot about hill forts and populations and things. So
good.
Quite good. But rather academic, I lose it a bit in places. Not being an academic sort of person.
Join the club. I lost the plot ages ago. I'm not saying that you have, but if you want to join the club and you've lost the plot, like both Pete's, then it's fine. Right, okay. When I say Pete now, I can't let the other Pete feel that it's not about him when it is, when it might not be. Right. Right, we're going to do a Pat now.
Oh, right. I haven't got any news, just except at about 9:30, I'll probably disappear.
Oh, in a puff of smoke.
A puff of smoke, yeah.
Well, nothing personally. I always thought Pat was a bit of a wick. Right, okay. Sorry, Pat. Don't take it personally. I do love you. Right, okay. Peter, anything you'd like to say?
No.
Do you see what happened then? The other Pete didn't even open his mouth. Right, Pete.
What's this? Hold on. I was thinking of our stones in urban settings, and this came up with one of the world's oldest monuments. I mean, it's an article online, so it's a bit excited, but one of the world's oldest monuments, as ancient as Stonehenge, sits in the middle of a council estate.
Oh yes,
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
yes,
it's in Edinburgh. It's in a council estate in Edinburgh, and it's sort of got some railings around it.
Yeah.
I think it's only about 100 meters away from where it was first recorded, standing.
It's trying to get out.
But it has been moved. I think it's been moved twice or three times. I think.
Oh goodness!
3 times. Yeah.
It goes to show these things have got powerful special properties, haven't they? They're able to move.
Yeah.
They can levitate by themselves.
Levitate. Yeah, I was going to show you the photograph of that. I didn't know about that, but the stone in Edinburgh. And for me personally, it would be great to have the stone back in its original spot. I really, really would like that personally. But it's obviously not. So we'll just see it for what it is. But it's on the internet if anyone wants to see that. Anyway, thanks for mentioning that, Pete. I'm glad you did. Right, who else have we got now? Right, okay, let's just see if there's anything from Andy this week.
I was sitting in a waiting room the other day, a proper one, and it had magazines. And one of them was a geographical magazine, and I picked up it. It was quite an interesting magazine, and there was an article in it referring to old maps about how much of the land in Cardigan Bay has disappeared. Several islands, and according to it was Tacitus, the Roman Ptolemy, wasn't it? It did the Roman map of that. Yeah. Fit about 13 kilometers of the land has disappeared since Roman times, which I didn't know. So it's really interesting. And it's not sunk, it's just eroded away.
And actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take myself off screen because I have got the research from that in front of me. It's these leaflets. I was basically, one of these has got a map of what you were just describing, Andy.
Yeah.
And there it is on there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a better map than I saw. Yeah, they had some very nice maps, but not as clear as that. That is a huge amount of land, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I could do instead of spoiling this now? Should I just try and put a little thing together for next week, because there's some really nice images from these. Yeah, that would if I do that, Andy, maybe we could do that for next week, a little bit next week. Yeah.
But I didn't know that. What surprised me was it's the West Coast. You hear about all the erosion and land disappearing off the East Coast, and I was quite surprised. So.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, we'll do that next week. That'll be put in. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Andy.
Yep.
Right, Adam.
No news this week.
Okay, no, that's fine. And so the only one that we've got left is David. Who, David, have you got anything you want to tell us this week?
No, thank you.
Okay, no, that's fine. Right. So what I'd like to do, we're gonna. I think we'll just get cracked on, what I've got this week is that I wanted to start with looking at Irish tombs, Irish megalithic tombs. I do have one announcement to make as well. And unfortunately, alas, it's come to that time of year again, that month again, that as of next week, we've got the start of the next cycle. So monies will be due as of next week. So that's the usual £50, £50. And if you could start getting those over to me, that would be really, really appreciated. And things are getting pretty tight at this moment. So if you can try and get them over, that would be brilliant. So £50 due for the next 2 months, starting as of now for next week. So I mentioned that, and the usual transfers and whatever you need to do about that. Thank you very much.
But it's my birthday in May. Can I have it a bit cheaper?
We'll knock a penny off.
Oh, flipping heck.
You did. Hang on. You did say a bit cheaper. Adam, isn't that cheaper?
Penny cheaper. What can a penny get you these days?
I tell you what. If you go to a penny toilet somewhere, if you can find one, then you can.
They're all 20p or 50.
No, nothing 10p
these days.
Well, you know, if you went to Barry in the Vale of Glamorgan, they pay you to use the toilets because they're so bad.
I'll tell you what you can do with a penny, what you can spend it on. You can put it in a wishing well and get a wish with a penny.
Oh, yeah, good investment.
You can do that.
That's a pretty good deal.
I think you can get banks for it as well, didn't it? Oh, no, that was $1. Credit Suisse got bought for $1. So
oh, that's right. Yes.
That's not far off a penny.
Yeah.
Do you know, I wish we hadn't even started that. You know, I really do. You know, right. Okay. Let's just crack on with what we're going to do now. So I'm gonna. That's where we're going to go, and we're going to get the images up, and hopefully we can get straight into the images. So let's just go there. In future, don't ask for a discount on your classes. By the way, I would like to say that the classes haven't increased in price for, I would say, 2.5 years. So there we go. I should put them up, shouldn't I, inflation? But I think some of you would be not happy with that, particularly Pete, who doesn't have any money at this minute. Oh, and accidentally we're showing you a little bit of the excavation area, which you're not supposed to see. Right, okay, this is where we are now. Can you actually see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see a map of Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, and just for the just so that wonderful, beautiful Margaret doesn't think that we're not doing Barrow diggers this week. We are. It's just that we're doing it the other way around this week.
Are they Barrow in Ireland?
Well, yes, Barrow's in Ireland, but we do have to do the Barrow diggers because you know that's what we need to do. You know, we've got to keep our Barrow diggers going. So, okay, so this I was inspired to look at this because it's most of the material that we're looking at today in this little part of the class itself dates actually to around 2004, but things have changed on the map, things have altered, you know, but generally this little introduction on Ireland this week and the megalithic tombs of Ireland, you know, it just gives you a bit of an overview. So Margaret, don't get upset, right? Don't get upset. We will be looking at some of this archaeology again. So please don't get you know, get the book out ready and probably keep it alongside your bed because I might turn around and say, Margaret, we're doing more about this Irish sort of these Irish monuments next week. So keep it there. So the first thing I'd like to say is by looking at this map, it's quite actually spectacular to actually look at this and think actually there's a lot in the way of megalithic, Neolithic, Mesolithic archaeology and so on, prehistoric archaeology in Ireland. This is just a little bit of an overview. This hasn't got the settlements in that we've been talking about. This hasn't got so many different things in. And, you know, we're looking, for example, about Northern Ireland. There's quite a number of sites, and we're talking on the west coast of Ireland. There's all these sites. These are the ones that we know about. There's hundreds and hundreds of them across Ireland. And when we think about it, is when we look at Ireland, we have a tendency to forget that Ireland is one of the lost gems within British prehistory, and this is why I wanted to sort of do a little bit of an introduction today. So, distribution of map of Irish megalithic tombs. Now, what does the word megalithic mean? Does it mean Mesolithic? Does it mean Neolithic? Megalithic means big. Whether you're talking about at the end of the Mesolithic period, throughout the Neolithic period, going a little bit into the Bronze Age, you're talking about a broad sweep of history that the megalithic world occupies, primarily in the Neolithic, from approximately 8,000 years ago, all the way through to roughly. So if you look about 8,000 years ago, and you look all the way through roughly to about 4,000 years, that you've got this idea that things need to be big, and they need to occupy the landscape. So sort of transitional stuff there. So what we're thinking about with this map is that it sort of covers lots of these sites in Ireland that are classed as megalithic tombs, Irish megalithic tombs. And I'm repeating myself a lot simply because I want to get the word megalithic, big, important, Irish. This is where we are for the first part today. And what we do know when we think about Ireland, their ability to build tombs, and a variety of different tombs, and a variety of structures that were undoubtedly used later on as tombs, tells us that people have been developing in an insular way, in a vernacular way, in a determinist way, in a post-processionalist way, all these wonderful words I'm chucking at you. In other words, the Irish have been trying to develop themselves as a civilized world into the Mesolithic period and beyond. And this is why we see the Irish with so much in the way of development. And well, again, I'll quote on the West Coast, if you can remember, in the Shannon Valley on the West Coast, what we found was the development of cremation thousands of years before anybody else in Ireland. And this is well beyond 10,000 years ago that we got cremation, which is in Ireland. Amazing that. So again, we're just thinking of that, and we're just trying to get that sort of idea into our heads. Again, not showing you too many images today. Just sort of, I think we're just showing about 4 or 5 images today of the few different types of megalithic sites that we see in Ireland. So very large stones were often used in the construction of these monuments. Stones. An ability to maneuver these enormous stones has for long been a source of amazement to even the most casual observer. And the answer that I'd usually give to that statement is they did it. For me, thinking about amazement is that they did it. When you use the word amazement, it's almost as if you're thinking, oh, they weren't able to do it. How did they do it? I tell you what, I've got I've managed to get one of my old cars operational. I've only got one old car here and a car that I use in the van, right? And I just thought, this car itself is a Ford Focus. It weighs about about 800 pounds, right? And under a ton. And I'm going to struggle to be able to move that because one of the wheels is actually stuck in the mud, right? But back in the day, these people were able to move stones, not cars with wheels, stones that were 10 tons, 20 tons, 150 tons in weight. So there's me saying to you, amazement. I'm amazed we're trying to, if I try to move my car out, right? There's not even a ton. But I don't use the word amazement with these people because it's disrespectful. They were able to do it. There's a tomb, for example, in County Carlow, known as the Cananstown or Cananstown tomb that has a capstone of 150 tons in weight. Now we're going to look at that again. Was it already there? Was it did it move an inch over there? Did it move 10 meters? Whatever.
I'll zoom in. All right. Yeah.
Hey? Everybody okay?
You need to mute David.
Oh, sorry. People. Yeah.
Don't worry. Nice to meet you.
All right. Yeah.
Do you want me to mute David?
No, they've gone.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. Was that your relatives?
Come on, Carl. Just get on with it.
Okay.
Go on, I'm sorry for the interruption.
Hey, you never need to apologize, David. It's okay. Don't need to apologize. So the County Carlow tomb itself in Cananstown itself, 150 tons in weight, a capstone, 150 tons. Again, reiterating this. But again, me saying that they did these things, they achieved movement. Excavations have taken place at less than 10% of all sites in Ireland. But these show that human remains were deposited in the monument generally following cremation and at the end of these tombs' active lives. Pottery and stone tools were usually laid in the tombs with the burials, and there is evidence that a range of ritual practice took place at various times at these monuments. One thing that I would say, David, Andy, and everybody else this week, is that these tombs were not just tombs. They were used for a variety of different purposes over time. And today's presentation itself takes us from Ireland and actually takes us to Dorset eventually. So it's quite a lot going in what we're doing today. Megalithic tombs have been excavated, surveys and discussed by us, and they've been looked at by archaeologists over many years. But much of what has been discovered about them by archaeologists is available only in specialist or obscured publications or in picture books with little or no accompanying text. I think that's a bit harsh sometimes. However, it's undoubtedly true. I hope that when we look at this today, this little bit brings the obscurity of this Irish world, even in a few moments today, a little bit more clearer in our heads. Some of these are being conserved, some of them have been left out on the landscape. Even the smallest tombs are of considerable interest, and all are part of the heritage and should be properly recorded and protected, as we know. And again, zooming in a little bit more, all these little dots. You know, I like this when we get all these little dots and look at that area there. So you know, the concentration. You know, when you think about it, in many ways, there's nothing like this in many places of Britain, and actually in lots of ways as well. When we think about Ireland, if we got to the north as well, if we think about Ireland, much of what we see about Ireland is actually sites that are still able to be studied and recorded and understood today. As you know, I'm very much a bit of a geek when I turn around to say that I think the Irish are so far better at protecting and showing us their archaeology than the likes of the English or the Welsh, except for the Scottish are brilliant as well. Sites are still being discovered both by archaeological survey teams and by interested amateur archaeologists or local historians, and each tomb adds to our knowledge of the past. And again, this is a little bit of an introduction today. Nothing massive, nothing big, and so on. When we do the Barrow diggers, for example, in the next few weeks, I'm going to turn around and say, is there any areas of the Barrow diggers that you want me to actually look at in a little bit more detail? Is there anything you actually want me to come back and have a little bit of a look at? So we've had that on our screen for a little bit of a while, and this. Now, Classifications of monuments. This is something I absolutely hate. When people sort of classify archaeological monuments and say these are Cotswold 7 tombs, for example, in regards to Cotswold 7 tombs around the Severn estuary and all the way as far as Kent, for example. So we've got these different categories, but when we think about Ireland, they tell us a little bit more than the categories that we get on mainland Britain. Classifications of monuments in Ireland, and when we think about in Ireland, we've got up to 1,700 of these type of monuments, for example, in Ireland. Right? You know, it's quite amazing that we've got these types of monuments in Ireland, 1,700, and there's still more of these megalithic tombs are still being recorded. Now, what does this look like? What is this? Is this a court tomb? Is this a portal tomb? Is this a passage tomb? Is this a wedge tomb? And again, we're only looking at a few images today to just give us a little bit of an idea. But this is characteristic, the image in front of us, of a court tomb. And there are over 400 of these across Ireland. Now, you know, when I think about my own land, Cymru, and you think about your own land, Cumbria, and Peter thinks about his beloved Cornwall, it would be very difficult to find a few dozen of these megalithic tombs. Obviously, there's a few more than a dozen in Wales, and there's a few more than a dozen in Cumbria, and there's a few more than a dozen in Cornwall. But I don't think all the examples of these megalithic tombs in Cumbria and Cornwall will even equate to the vast number of 1,700 that are actually found in Ireland. Again, just reiterating this, when we think about Ireland, did we know there was this much in the way of prehistory there? As can be seen again on this wonderful map, megalithic tombs were built over most of the country. There are little bits of the country, maybe in a little bit of the south, maybe a little bit towards the east, and maybe a little bit in places towards the middle of the country, toward Dublin. There are a little few less than everywhere else, but it might actually be to do with the fact, and Andy mentioned this earlier on, about submerging worlds. Maybe there's some more of these tombs that are buried out at sea in the Irish Channel. But that's for another day, or they simply haven't been found. And particularly if they're in the middle of Dublin, you're not going to be able to find them now, are you? The totals for each of the categories that we'll mention are based on figures that come to us over 20 years ago. So that figure's increased quite a lot since. And when we think when we think about this categories of sites, there's lots of sites in Ireland, but we really don't know what they are yet. So, you know, a few more court tombs and a few more portal tombs and passage tombs and wedge tombs will be undoubtedly found. And when we chuck the word again, I know I'm picking on one category, Cotswold 7 tomb. It's not very descriptive, is it? Cotswold 7 tomb. Right, okay, not very descriptive. But this court tomb, and bingo, it looks like a bit like a court. There's a court. There's like an open area in the front. There's a little entranceway, and this is actually very similar to a site on the Gower in South Wales, and known as the Giant's Grave. And it's very similar to this. Very similar to this. And again, what I want to do is I want us to look at these sites again, individual sites in Ireland. And as you are starting to know, and as you're starting to see, the Neolithic period is absolutely, my friend, bloody huge as an area of study. than any other period in British history. Okay, if we did medieval history now, yeah, we would find a few more medieval sites than Neolithic sites. But after all, there's only so many Motte and Bailey castles from the Norman period that you can actually look at, right? There's only so many arrangements of villages that you can actually look at, right? And I know that's not me. I know that's not fair. You know what I mean? That's not fair. However, the population was a lot less in the Neolithic period, and there's a massive area of archaeology that is out there in the Neolithic period, as we're seeing to study. And there's some Neolithic categories of sites that we haven't even touched upon yet. And I'm looking forward to my causewayed enclosures. I really, really am. And I'm looking forward to taking us to Orkney. I really am. Skara Brae, and you know, the Isle of Lewis, and so on and so on. But
Maze How.
Shut up. Amaze how, exactly. Just because you've been there, Pete, you know, and you've got some images of it. Court tombs. This is a court tomb island. These sites, as you can see, have an open court, and it accesses into a gallery there. So you go in through there, and you go all the way along. There's sort of little cubby holes on the left and the right, left and the right, left and the right, till you get to the end. Very similar designs, but like deviances. And there are over 400 of these across Ireland. So these, it's said that these may have been roofed at one stage. I'm one of those archaeologists who would disagree with that, simply because to roof over this one, you need more than a massive capstone. If I'm allowed to say that maybe they roofed them over with timber, right, that would make sense. But I'm very much into the idea, and this is me, right? This is me talking. I'm very much into the idea, if you place human remains in there and you're open to the elements, what better way to die? Well, you're already dead, aren't you? But what better way to rot away? But what better way to be out in the elements, having birds pick at your flesh, giving some nutrients back to birds and giving nutrients back to the soil, and you're looking up at the heavens. Who wants to be buried underground after all? That's my view. So don't take any more from that, please. So a roof gallery, unroofed, timbered, but there's no stone roofing over it. Burial area. Is this what it always was? The answer is no. This consists of 2 or more sets of chambers. There we go, entrance sets of chambers. And, you know, these got cubby holes on the left and the right as you go down. A gallery, left and the right. I know it's a little short cubby hole left and the right. The chambers, it says, in some of them may have been corbelled over. So maybe the central gallery may have been open, may have been roofed, may have been corbelled over. All these different ways of thinking about this and interpretation and so on. But what we do know is we can clearly see that the rest of the structure is dry stone. And again, we can debate this. This is a standard plan that we could see across Ireland, and many dominate in the northern part of the country, dominate in the northern part of the country. So what else? What other type of tombs do we have in Ireland? Well, if there's over 1,700 and we've only done 400 of them, right? What's next? Well, let's look at what's next. Oh, but we can't look at what's next a minute, because what I wanted to do is mention what this is about. Okay, these are the types of artifacts you might find in one of these court tombs. Artifacts from the Irish court tombs, for example. What we do, we have a nice variety of flints and chert tools, and maybe classed as weapons. And when we look at number 9, right, and image 8, that's the pottery of the day. right? So we've got pottery being used at this stage within our Irish Neolithic period. And the dates for these might be quite widely setting, right? So we're not going to put dates on these today. We know they're in the Neolithic. We know they're sometime they're sometime roughly maybe 6,000-7,000 years ago, somewhere like that, right? We're just given an idea, or maybe they're a lot younger than that. Maybe they date from roughly 5.5, 6,000 years ago. But again, let's not spoil this by looking at dates. The next type of tomb are these. Now, Peter, do these look very similar to ones in Ireland, in Cornwall?
Oh yes, and the ones locally.
And yes, the one at St. Lythans. And you've been to the one at Pentre Ifan in West Wales, yeah?
Yeah. The entrance way to that one you were showing earlier is almost identical to that of Tinkage Wood.
Actually, Pete, I thought you might say that, but when you think about the one at Tinkinswood, it's a Cotswold 7 tomb. It's not very descriptive, is it? But this is descriptive. It says it's a court tomb. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm glad we came back to that. It's a court tomb. Court tomb. That's no more, no less. This is the word portal tomb. Now, that's not really descriptive, but then again, it is when you think about, you go to places in Ireland. I keep saying Ireland when I mean Cornwall. When you go to Cornwall, actual Cornwall itself, and you see these near Penzance, for example, you see them heading into Cornwall as well, and you see them as you cross across the moors as well. And these are very similar. They're called dolmens, portal tombs, whatever you want to call them in Cornwall. Very similar build to the ones in Ireland as well. These are often quite spectacular monuments with a single chamber covered by a large capstone, a single space, a single area between upstanding stones. Many have tall orthostats, tall standing stones, set at the front of the tomb so that the capstone rises to the front, sometimes at a significant angle. That's what you can clearly see. Again, more detail about this again. They occur, again, lots of them occur mainly in the north part of the island. And there are a considerable number as well in the southeast. Well, that's a bit odd, isn't it? So we've got lots in the north part of the island, lots in the southeast of the island. So never eat shredded wheat. Looking towards Wales, for example. Rather interesting, that. Now, there are around 200 of these in Ireland, in different states of collapse, in different states of standing up, in different states of preservation in Ireland. So we're so far just over 800 of the 1,700. So we've now got to look at what is Newgrange. Newgrange is a passage tomb, right? Now, we know what Newgrange is, and I just wanted again to show you one type of site. These are the passage tombs themselves, right? And this is what Newgrange is. This is actually what's called the Noath Passage tombs. And actually, if you look around, there's more than one. There's more than one. There's lots of little ones, right? Lots of little baby ones at the Noath Passage tombs. There's lots of little baby ones around, as you can actually see. And if the orientation there, we've got north as well. So that's really interesting. But I never really go with the way these are aligned as being as significant as lots of archaeologists say, because as you know, the sun rises and sets in different sort of orientations at different times of the year, and you're thinking, well, you know, if the person chose to do it this time, you know, and all these different things. So I don't really go much for that, but again, more discussion in the future. Passage tombs, there are a whopping nearly 250 across island. Passage tombs. How many of these great massive types of huge tombs are to be found in Wales? There are a few, but not as many as in Ireland. Okay, we can put ours in a bucket. They can sort of put theirs on a bus. This type of tomb has a relatively narrow passage, as you can see, right? And it comes into a crucifix, right? Comes into a bit of a crucifix. And this, when you think about it, and when you get to the end, when you get to that crucifix there from the east and the west, these are small chambers of cells, frequently open off the main chamber, sometimes producing a cruciform plan. The passages were roofed with capstones, as were the smaller chambers, corbelled sometimes. And lots of the times they have when you go to Newgrange itself, there's carvings in the stone. But nevertheless, there are carvings in lots of the other sites that we've just mentioned from Ireland, you know, the portal and the court tombs. Many of the structural stones had designs or symbols carved on them, and these are mainly in the cruciform area, but when you go down them, you can sometimes see them on the left and the right as well. And when we do look at what's typical about this, it's a large, you've got these passages, usually one set of passages, you've got two sets of passages, the main one, and corbelled over to keep the earth out, or sort of linteled over. And around this is a curb of stones to keep the soil subsiding. And you could think that, go on, Pete, say it again, Mice How. Mice How is a much bigger, is a much sort of smaller but taller example, for example, on Orkney. But again, similar idea. So these curved stones around the outside keep the earth and all the stuff subsiding. There is considerable variation in the size of these monuments. Passage tombs tend to occur in cemeteries, as you can see. You can see the ones at Noth there. And they're on the high ground or hilltops. Not all of the monuments as we've seen are usually, for example, when we've looked at the court tombs and the portlaw tombs, they don't necessarily need to be high up, but these are. These are distributed again in the north and the east of the island. And again, looking at these on a later date. So again, nearly 250 of these in Ireland. The next category is a whopping around 550 examples in Ireland. And that is, right, Margaret, if you've been listening, or you haven't been listening, hopefully you haven't been listening, Margaret, right? I want you to tell me what type of tomb the next one is by the shape. Is that fair, Margaret? Go for it. Whisper the answer to it. Don't. What does that look like, Margaret? And don't say you tombs.
Hoof.
Who? Yeah, I might give 1 out of 3 points for that one. What does a hoof look like? What's another word for a hoof? A shape of a hoof?
Horseshoe.
No, she already said that, Andy. Stop it.
Cloven.
Clover. Think about wood.
Just realised I'm muted, aren't I? So you couldn't hear anything that I said.
I thought, oh, go on, Margaret, give it to us. If you say something now, I'll forever hold our peace.
You did show that earlier, but I can't remember what you said it was called. I'm wondering if I've written it down.
It's a wedge-shaped tomb.
A wedge-shaped tomb.
Wedge-shaped tomb. Wedge.
Yeah, you showed that right at the beginning, didn't you?
Wedge-shaped tomb. Yes, I did. And these monuments consist of a rectangular main gallery or chamber, right, which is there, right? But then it then starts to sort of alter into this wedge shape. So in other words, in many ways, it's like one endless sort of sausage of a tomb extended from what's on the right there, right? So that's where the main thing is. And what you can see is there's lots going on even from this plan. That there's It says about sort of cremations. It says about various displaced capstones and various other things, and holes and cremation pits, all from a variety of different dates. Lots going on here. And obviously with some kind of mound around it as well. So, it's talking about, the orientation of these can alter. It was linteled over with those capstones. The distribution of these is quite widespread over Ireland, but mainly in Clare and Cork. So, we're getting this sort of feel, we're getting this sort of sense of differences, types of these monuments across Ireland. Now, strangely enough, which we're not going to go into detail, but we'll just mumble over it, there are other categories of sites in Ireland. As you know, the Irish don't keep things simple. There are, and when you look around the outside as well, there's sort of what seemingly look like pits around the outside as well. So it's a sort of a site almost developed from sort of the Mesolithic mindset, the Mesolithic psyche. There are other sites across Ireland. Many sites that we see across Ireland are unclassified, and the problem is that there's other types of sites in Ireland that we really can't perceive where they fit. Somebody one day may have said, "Oh, what we're going to do, we're going to build something in a different way." Another difficulty with classifying the other types of sites is that some appear to have been altered. And we've got a court tomb that's been altered in County Derry, and it had a wedge tomb added at the rear of the cairn. And then we've got in County Donegal, we've got a portal tomb that's been almost converted into a court tomb. So in other words, we've got all these different tiles of tombs, so it's very difficult to work out what's going on. And what's also important as well, right? And I think maybe I should go to one of the images that we already done, one of the other images, and you might understand what I'm talking about, right? So if we go to this, right, when you think about this type of monument, this is sticking out like a sore thumb across the monument, across the landscape into the next period. So after these have been constructed and used up until about 4,500 years ago, 4,000 years ago, whatever the cutoff point, you're well into the Bronze Age, right? These are sticking out across the landscape, right? These might be covered up, right? These might be sort of, you could see these, and these, we don't know where these fit in, and that's that type of thing, right? But these are going to be standing out. Many sites, when obviously it's obvious that they were reused, and when they were reused, it alters the nature of the Neolithic. And what you might find, for example, with sites like this with a pile of earth over them, or sites like this with which are a great sort of Barrow, what you might find is that burials of different dates have been added to these because people bury where they bury. People are buried over there, right? Let's bury a few people over there, or we might not. So this sort of changes the dates and alters the classification and sort of alters the field work and field survey. And what I mean by that, I've been an archaeologist for quite some time, right? And the site that we've got here, on all the documentation, it actually says that no field work has ever been taken place here. It from the way it's shaped, everybody said it's prehistoric, but I said no, it's not. Yeah, it was prehistoric. It's not prehistoric. Yeah, but it is prehistoric. No. So when we put a small trial excavation pit into the ground, what we come across is a late medieval wall. And above that is the supposed prehistoric remains. But they can't be prehistoric because underneath the supposed prehistoric stuff is a medieval wall, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that when you look at these types of monuments in Ireland, as an analogy of what we've just said, they have been used and reused and sort of constituted, and stones moved and altered, right? Nobody in the Bronze Age turned around and say, hey, look, cock, you can't alter that tomb over there, right? It's 2,000 years old. It's scheduled ancient monument. Oh, they didn't think about that 4,000 years ago. They used these monuments for whatever they used them for. You know, Peter will tell you, I think Peter's been to St. Lythans with me, or maybe he hasn't, but what way in the early 1800s, these types of tombs in the Vale of Glamorgan were used to keep cattle, or they were used to keep sheep, or they were used to keep dogs, because they're perfect shelter in area. You could probably get, well, you could probably get about 50 Shetland sheep in there, but because my sheep are tiny, no, I could probably get 10 Shetland sheep in there. You could probably only get about 5 normal size sheep. But the fact of the matter is, they've been used for other purposes. Then what I'm trying to get through is that they're not just Neolithic. They've got other uses throughout time. Why can't they have been used? Because they have. So what's going to happen is that maybe people have moved stones away from this. Maybe they've revealed this a bit more. Lots of sites in Ireland are still unexcavated. So when we think about those bloody barrow diggers, Ruddock, the barrow digger of the north, and we look at Cunnington in the south, and we think about Pengelly in Cornwall and Dorset, and we think about them excavating lots of different sites. And I like the work of Pengelly, but we do know that he excavated everywhere as well, even excavated in Wales. But one thing that we would say in Ireland is there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been excavated. And I'm going to make a bit of a bombastic statement. Maybe it's because Ireland's had lots of problems and lots of trouble. And the last thing that people want to do in Ireland is dig holes in the ground. So it's meant that lots of the archaeology is free and available for us to study today. And when we think maybe in Ireland there might be a completely new category of archaeological site still to be looked at, still to be understood. And, you know, it's good that it's exciting that we might actually find new types of archaeology in Ireland. Are we able to say the same for Cumbria? Maybe not. Wales, not sure. Cornwall, well, you know, Cornwall's Cornwall. But Ireland, it's almost as if there's a lot more to be seen. And maybe there might be double the number of these types of monuments in Ireland. I think that's a bit exaggerated, actually. But maybe there might be a few more hundred that we haven't found. So that's a little bit of a look at Irish megalithic tombs today. And what I want us to do now is I want us to look at something completely different. So I want us to time travel in time, and I want us to look at an article that has just been published that was given to me. I think this is dated to the 22nd of April. So when was that? 2 or 3 days ago. And it's from Portugal. And let's go to here. What's this about? Now, again, this was brought to us by Goff in my Wednesday evening class. Thank you very much, Goff. And we always love people's contributions. Now, published April the 22nd. And this is, it says 2-minute read. So there we go. This itself, the title of this is Under Lisbon's Streets. Right, Under Lisbon Streets. So this is what we're going to do now. Lisbon Streets in Portugal. And here we go. It goes as follows. Twice a year, a hatch in a busy Lisbon street opens to reveal steps leading to one of the Portuguese capital's most ancient sites, a 2,000-year-old Roman structure that still holds the buildings above it together. And there is Andy emerging from the streets of Lisbon. I wanted to bring this in here as to sort of lighten the load of the prehistoric. That's why we're doing it. And when we think about it, this is the Roman drain system. Fascinating. Do you know what? We've got a Roman drain system which is still operational in York, which you could still go down to see. But alas, unfortunately, I've never been able to get down to see it. I think it was health and safety reasons. That before everything changed last year, I had tried to get you guys to go down to the sewage system in York, but we weren't able to do it. I think there was a COVID problem as well. Don't ask. So, dating back to days after the death of Jesus Christ, the crypto portico, subterranean maze of tunnels and passageways, was built by the Romans, who occupied the city known as Lisipo. And they'd been there for 300 years. And obviously this system is still operational today. The city remained under Roman control for a number of centuries. This structure guaranteed, and 2,000 years later continues to guarantee, that the buildings above our heads are stable and safe for those who live, work and walk up there. Director of the Lisbon Museum, Joan Souza, who actually takes tours down there. It's known as the Roman Galleries tours. And lots of people have been going down there and leaving their graffiti for quite some years. It only opens only a few days in April and September each year. The space is usually flooded due to an aquifer running beneath the city, a live aquifer still. The water, which is essential for its preservation, must be pumped out to allow access. So the other thing as well is we need water flowing to actually keep the drains from collapsing in many ways. And interestingly enough, nobody knew these existed until 1771, around just a few years after Pompeii and Herculaneum were being first explored. When Lisbon was being rebuilt after the devastating Great Earthquake of 1755. Hang on a minute. There was an earthquake in 1755. They found the drain system and it was being examined in 1771. It was still there. So it survived the Great Earthquake of 1755 and it's still operational. So people are very lucky to go down and see this. It's unmissable. And what you've got to do is just go and enjoy something like this. And to be honest with you, I would love to see this drain system, because this looks very similar to the Roman drainage system in York and the Roman drainage system in London, Eberacum, York, and Londinium, London. And also, there's talk that there's a similar drain system that hasn't really been explored underneath the city of Lindum, which is Lincoln. And there's obviously similar in Bath as well, but that's another story. So I wanted to bring this to you as a little bit of a break to our Barrow diggers. And what we're going to do now, we're going to do a little bit about the Barrow diggers, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break, if I may say so. Oh, by the way, we've got to mention Drina. We are missing you, Drina, and hopefully, if you're watching this video, it's giving you a bit of a boost. By the way, Drina, right? Anne said that she'll take you for fish and chips when you're well enough, and the sauce is on me. I'll have to send you a bottle of ketchup, Anne. All right. So I don't know if she has ketchup with her chips, but again, I think this is great, and in many ways they've got a different way of offering their history and archaeology in different parts of the world compared to us in Great Britain. I would love to see this in York, and I know the system in York is very similar, and it's a shame that we don't get and go and see it. So, and also, hang on a minute, wasn't something similar in Exeter found? Dominion. I'm sure it was. Anyway, that's something in the back of my mind. Right, what we got to do is get to the Barrow diggers now, and then we'll have some questions. Not yet, though, folks. Not yet. So let's because we'll have questions just before the break. So who is this guy? Who are we looking at? This is John Thurnham. Now, where we left the Barrow diggers last time was there was disquiet amongst those who believed that the likes of Cole Hall had been doing things in an incorrect manner. We've got this guy called Lucas, and Lucas was one of those antiquarians who was very, very critical of the work of Thomas Bateman, right? Now, Lucas wasn't all holier than thou, and let's just take a look at the barrows that Lucas had dug. Now, Lucas had dug 26 barrows in Wiltshire, Yorkshire, Cambridge between 1842 and 1864. Well, that's not bad, is it, really, when you think about it? That's one barrow a year. So Lucas was a little bit more holier than thou in comparison with this next guy that we're going to look at called Thurnham, who dug 94 barrows. And Lucas was definitely more holier than thou than Bateman's, Thomas Bateman's excavations of barrows at 200 in 17 odd years in Derbyshire, Staffordshire, and Leicestershire, right? So we started off with a little bit of shenanigans. And what we would like to do now is that we would like to look at a chap by the name of John Thurnham. Now, John Thurnham links up with this Lucas character. In accordance with the growing practice of seeking specialist reports on human bones, Lucas adds a footnote on a skull from the Barrow examined by John Thurnham. This is John Thurnham. John Thurnham was starting to look at skulls, but we know that John Thurnham excavated 94 barrows, many more than Lucas. The Barrow Cemetery of 1861 that Lucas was examining, it was said that 40 of these barrows had been damaged by tree planting. Suddenly overnight, we've moved from archaeologists damaging barrows to natural occurrences damaging barrows. Lucas felt that many of the Wiltshire barrows were of large dimensions since they had been enlarged to admit other subsequent interments. Now, what we need to think about now is the like of Dr. John Thurnham. But before I do that, I was going to ignore this whole thing, but there's a little bit about Cornwall. We're going to mention this, right? A certain guy by the name of William Borlass, which I do remember we've done some time ago. As well as opening barrows at Collingbourne, Lucas also dug at several long barrows in Wessex. So he got himself out and about. Later in the 1860s, he was busy excavating barrows around Thornborough Henge monuments in Yorkshire. So Lucas got around, but he only excavated 26 mounds and was also digging up Saxon interments with a chap by the name of Greenwell. He could not closely or even loosely assess the period of round barrows he dug because no one can do so with any degree of certainty, he wrote. Attempts of this kind have been too common and been too often based on insufficient data. Now, that's really interesting, that if you've not noticed what I've just said, Lucas had a preference to show us the data, but not to be drawn on dates. And I think that's very sensible. The best Lucas could do is to say that lots of barrows belong to pre-Roman periods, except for the Anglo-Saxon examples. Further than he could go, really, because we didn't have the dating levels of experience. Lucas drew a number of illustrations. He was a good illustrator in a book entitled British Barrows by Greenwell. And I would make the statement, if any of you go onto the internet and you look up Greenwell's British Barrows and the work of Lucas, L-U-K-I-S, and any of the ones that we've mentioned, you can actually find copies on the internet, usually eBay, but they're quite expensive. Later still in the century, we've got a chap, Lucas was working with a William Borlass in Cornwall while researching for a book known as Rude Stone Monuments of Cornwall, published in 1885. Rude meaning common. This guy, Thomas John Thurnham, lived between 1810 and 1873. And I would like to introduce this beautiful skull. Now, you know, suddenly overnight, this actually looks like a skull, doesn't it? It really does look like a skull. We're starting to draw things anatomically that are actually skulls, that look like skulls. So I was slightly critical of Thurnham, right, by saying that, you know, he's excavated 90 odd tombs, but, you know, maybe I was a bit overcritical. And the other thing as well is when you're looking at these tombs, are you excavating them all, or are you just taking a sample out? This is one of the things when we, I know Margaret and I were agreeing in the early lectures about barrow diggers. You know, a guy excavated 10 barrows in a day and another one excavated 5 in a day. And you're thinking, well, did they do what we think they did, right? So if I asked wonderful Margaret, do you think that they excavated all these tombs, you know, 10 in a day, right? These barrows, or did they just put a hole in there and think they can't find it and then go on to the next one? That's probably more likely what they did. So when other people went along and looked at these barrows 100 odd years later, they were able to excavate them and find things, right? So were they as bad as we actually think? I think one of the great criticisms when we think about these barrow diggers is that they didn't produce things like this, like Dr. John Thurnham did. And it's said that he was an interpreter and synthesizer of barrows and their contents than anyone else before. He is remembered for his great monograph on ancient British barrows, especially those of Wiltshire and the adjoining counties. Part 1 on long barrows appeared in Archaeologia in 1868. Part 2 on round barrows followed in 1871. These two papers form the basis of all subsequent barrow study since they assessed all the information gleaned from every previous published excavation and analysed the mound types and the relics they contained under a series of headings. Now, this is rather interesting because you've got somebody for the first time taking all of these sites and trying to understand them, trying to make use of what's being found, and analysing the mound types under a series of different headings was the work of our friend, Mr. Thurnham. He was only 63 when he passed on as well. So, you know, he managed to do quite a lot. Thurnham's true importance lies in the mass of important facts he gleaned from his vast and penetrating study of tumuli. As far as his own personal excavations go, it has been said that he was indefatigable in exploring ancient British barrows. Indefatigable. The word indefatigable, there was an indefatigable in the fleet fighting Napoleon. Basically, somebody that goes out and sort of gets and does what they're meant to do. Although strangely for one whose analysis of Barrow's was so acute and progressive, his actual techniques were in many respects not as contemporary as they could be. For this reason, Thurman's real fame rests in his valuable repositories of basic information on long and round barrows, which, interpreted with perception and scholarship, are still of great value today. Now, that's really interesting. We've got somebody whose work today is still looked at and still understood and still relished. During his lifetime, Thurnham gained notice in several spheres of activity as a doctor, as an archaeologist. Now, it's quite odd that you could be a doctor and an archaeologist and a craniologist, somebody who actually studied skulls, but a doctor and an archaeologist, a craniologist, are all really, really linked. And as a medical superintendent of the Wiltshire County Asylum in Devizes. Can you imagine a conversation, Margaret, right, with a mental patient in the asylum in Devizes? The mental patient says, "Oh, what do you do in your spare time, Doc?" "Oh, well, I dig up bodies." Really? So what the patient must have thought of this guy, I don't know, right? But I think it's quite interesting that we've got somebody who's a superintendent of the Wiltshire County Asylum. This is our Mr. Thurnham. A post he held from 1851, the year of his marriage, until his death, which was, as we know, in 1873. And he was born near York of a Quaker family. He was privately educated and became a member of the Royal College of Surgeons in 1834, at the age of 24. In 1843, he became a member of the Royal College of Physicians and a fellow in 1859. He graduated as a medical doctor at Aberdeen University in 1843. He don't have to get around a bit, this guy. His first post appears to have been that of resident medical officer at the Westminster Hospital, which he held from 1834 to 1838. It's great to get an idea of the background and what makes these people think. There's our next guy that we're going to do after this guy. According to people of the time, he held a post of curator at Yorkshire Museum at the same time. So, as well as being involved he was a medical superintendent of a retreat in York as well at the same time between 1834 and 1838. He was also curator of the York Museum. In 1849, he was selected as medical superintendent at the Wiltshire County Asylum, then being built in Devizes. So a new mental asylum eats your heart out. What I'm trying to get at is this guy followed the archaeology wherever he went. This is why he was on all these different places. Unlike practically every other person that we've looked at, he actually had a real job, right? When we think about Thomas Bateman, he was a man of leisure, right? We think about all the reverends and all the rest of it who went out sort of doing a little bit of clergy stuff, and all the rest of it. This guy had a real job. In early life, Thurnham gained some reputation as an authority on heart disease, and for his statistical studies of insanity. In Wiltshire, he became an expert on craniology. This is where the drawings of the skulls come in. And basically, there's a publication known as the Crania Britannica, published with Barrow Davis, which basically looks at a study of British prehistory, Roman and Saxon skulls. So for the first time, we've got the studies of skulls, craniological drawings of skulls as perfect as this, to analyze the skulls of prehistoric Roman and early medieval Saxon skulls. And this is basically where we're going. We're going to the edge of understanding and doing this comparison. He himself gathered a large collection of skulls, now in the Duckworth Museum, Cambridge. And at that moment, we're actually going to ask if there's any questions, because I've just realized it's getting so dark that I can't see. Right, so I'm going to need to put a light on. So this is, we're going to have questions now. Oh God, my eyes are going to have to get used to this. We're going to take questions now. So there we go. So where do we go next? We go with there, and we go down a partridge in a pear tree. Good. Right, David, any questions?
Thank you.
David, you need to put your light on as well. Peter.
No.
Okay, Adam.
Yeah. Going back to those 150-ton stones, how do you think they were moved?
Do you honestly, right? There's basically, if okay, we're going to leave the 150-ton stone there. We're going to move a 55-ton stone at Tinkinswood Burial Chamber in the Vale of Glamorgan, right? So basically, we've got a quarry that seems to have been opened at one side, right? So therefore, you can lever this stone out over a progression of time, right? Now, my ideas with Tinkinswood Burial Chamber was that the chamber already existed well before the capstone was placed on it. In doing so, you've got a bank that already creates a ramp that is positioned alongside where the capstones are, and I can only be reminded of what that little story that I've always told you, and I will tell you again. I'll tell you this story that I've told at least once a month in every single lecture. Professor Colin Richards told me when he went to a Pacific island this one day, he was told that the next day they would be woken up and they would see the movement of a very hefty stone, right? And basically Colin Richard would be finally told, as a prehistoric expert, a professor of prehistory at University of Highlands and Islands, he was at Manchester for a time, he would be shown how you move a stone that's in excess of 5 tons in weight, right? So basically this stone itself, he gathered with masses and he thought that those people would be the ones moving the stone. There were 2 boys who were tasked with moving that stone. And what they used was the oils of seaweed to move the stone. And there was these 2 lads moving this stone, and it wasn't exactly on the flat or downhill. Some of it was actually, it was over 1 kilometer this stone was being moved. And after halfway, one of the lads slipped, and somehow he trapped one of his limbs underneath the stone, so he had to be taken to hospital. So then the job was then to move this stone with 1 person. This is, remember, a stone that weighs a hell of a lot more than my car, right?
Ooh.
Frozen.
You froze.
Oh dear.
Frozen in time.
Carl, oh, that's it.
Am
You're
I
back.
here?
You
I'm
are
back.
back.
Right.
It is.
Okay, so in other words, what happened? The stone moved. This one boy was able to move the stone, right? So, and this is one individual moving a stone that's over 5 tons in weight, right? So, and Colin Richards said it wasn't possible, but that morning it was proven it was possible. So all you've got to do is think the 50 plus ton stone, right? That 50 plus ton stone, does it need 1 person? Does it need 5 people or 1,000 people to move it? The answer is not many at all. So as long as you can get traction and movement of the stone, that stone can be moved, but it doesn't have to be moved in 1 single day. It's not levered up. There's no sort of cranes or anything. It's gradually moved forward. And as long as you can gradually move it forward over time, the traction will eventually get that 50-ton stone on top of the burial chamber, right? What you've got to think, it was doable. One thing that's really highly insulting, folks, is when you get groups of people going to ancient Egypt, trying to build a copy of the ancient pyramids and not able to do it with modern technology or even ancient technology. They say it can't be done, it was built by aliens. How insulting and how gut-wrenching is that? The answer is, Adam, I've given you part of an answer. We'll do that 150-ton stone again. But the fact of the matter is, they did it. And that's the answer.
Cool. Cheers for that.
Right, so we've done Peter Cornwall, I think. Have we done Peter Cornwall? Right, I think we have. Right, okay. We'll do Peter Dorset. Do I sound like somebody from Devon? Do I sound like somebody from Dorset, or does I sound like somebody from Somerset?
Devon. No, nothing from me. Nothing useful.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Little lady, let's talk to a Californian. Hello, Pat, who's not from California at all. Never mind.
Colorado. No questions. Thank you.
Colorado. It's near California. Right. Okay, then, Margaret.
Well, going to the Barrow digging people.
You go for it.
I was going to say, what did they actually, I presume they were digging because they wished to learn something. Being archaeologists, they wanted to learn something. And it seems that John Fernham was looking at it from an anatomical interest, seeing as he was a surgeon. Yes,
obviously, this is the thing. And one thing that I would say is maybe I'm going to be a little bit unfair on archaeologists. We do it because we've usually got obsessive personalities, and we do it because we're obsessed. You know, there was a historian who's still alive, right? And his wife, she said to me a few months back, she said, oh, you know, my husband, he's obsessed with history and archaeology. He only thinks about old things, you know. I'm living, I'm his wife. He's not really much interested in me. I don't even know why I married him, right? He's obsessed with history and archaeology. I said, you nailed it. That nails the answer, Margaret, because it's an obsession. And if it's an obsession looking at skulls, if it's an obsession, you've got to do it. Like it's a compulsion. You've got to dig these things, right? I got to be honest with you. There's nothing normal about an archaeologist. We're all as barking and we're all as off our heads, right?
But generally, you're hoping to learn something from the past, aren't you? On the whole,
when you look at it, yes. That's what we tell you, but in most cases we just keep doing it, you know, and it's just and actually having to publish reports and write things up is just a pain in the backside, but yeah, we do it, and it's what keeps us going. It's like Andy, you know. Andy, I'm not getting personal, but I'm sure Andy's been asked by family members, why did you go out life saving? Why did you risk your life? You know, what are you doing it? And Andy says, well, I got to do it. I like doing this, but it's what I want to do, right? There's no real answer to it. And why should we have to have an answer? And basically, hopefully that's answered your question.
But I'd like to know what they learnt. Have they?
You would like to know what they learned.
What John Fernham learnt about the skulls.
Yes, we
progressed his career.
We will be doing a little bit about that. We will talk a little bit about that. Fernham was concerned almost to the point of obsession.
Oh God.
Yeah. So right, yeah.
Do you think they had no regard for these barrows because they considered them pagan?
Oh my God, what a bombastic statement to make. In some cases, yes. Yes. In some cases, yes. I'm gonna say it as it is, right? Let's just paint something white as or black or whatever you want to do it, right? People who work in a knacker's yard, right, will kill as many animals as they want every day, right? It's what they do, right? They just do it, right? And digging these barrows, they just do it. So I'm going to say it. I don't want to. Some people who work in knackers yards don't give a damn about animals. some people do, right? I'm sure they do, right?
They get a product from the knackers yard, don't they? That's used
exactly. But you could, the same analogy, Margaret, is exactly the same about archaeologists. Some archaeologists do it because it's a job, right? Some archaeologists do it because we've got passion. Some archaeologists do it because there's money in it. So there's various different ways of doing that. So one second, I'm on my break now. So 1 sec. Okay, hopefully that's answered it, Margaret. So Anne, anything you'd like to say?
Well, I thought the underwater streets in Portugal were amazing, and looking at those buildings that the Romans had done, and you said there were some in Britain in several areas. Did they do that right across their empire? Do you know?
Yes, they did. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. It was a part of Roman civilization. We've got sewer systems like that. It definitely in Aberacum, definitely Lincoln, definitely Londinium, London. We've definitely got sewer systems in Carinian, Cirencester. We've got Vericonium, Wroxeter. We definitely do have them. We've obviously got them in Aqua Sulis, Bath. We've definitely got them out there. We've definitely, undoubtedly got them in Exeter. I know we've got them in Exeter because I sent everybody out to look for them. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We know we got them in Exeter.
It's
Veronium, I think, is Exeter.
It seems staggering when you think of like life now and the cost of trying to do anything. When you look at that, what they were doing then, I mean, the wealth must have been incredible. In a way, I can't quite absorb.
But me and Margaret.
But they did have slaves, I suppose.
Well, we could talk about slaves or not or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, when we think about, me and Margaret just had a conversation about it. The Romans were obsessed with doing civilization, and the reason why I'm going to say obsessed with doing civilization, Londinium did not need a basilica the size of the basilica that was built in Londinium. It didn't need all the sewage systems that were built in Londinium, but they built them, right? They didn't need all the sewage systems and gateways in Lincoln, but they built them. Hadrian's Wall didn't need to be built. Hadrian's Wall is a pointless white elephant. It did not need to be built. There's no reason why Hadrian's Wall or the Antonine Wall needed to be built. We now know that most of these weren't military frontiers. So the fact of the matter is they built them because they built them. And as troops marched into Damascus in 1917, right, they're there because they're there.
Right. Do you think that's because a lot of architects had got to make their name or something, that they were obsessed with doing all this building?
Exactly, making their name. Exactly, I would go with that.
Pre-Roman, they had drains in Scarabray. Remember, you went down one.
Yes, they also. Yeah, we're not arguing whether people in the Neolithic period had drains or not. They did have drains, but the Romans were more obsessed with drains than not. You know. Maybe the people in Orkney were a bit obsessed with drains, Peter. I've got to be honest with you, they are a bit odd. I don't ever call anyone in Orkney Scottish because you'll be 10 foot under. Right, okay.
And thank you for that.
Andy, anything you want to say before we have our 10-minute break?
I was interested in the construction of that first tomb in Ireland that you showed. It was all stone. We don't have many like that in England, do we?
We have one or two in Wales, and do you know what, Andy? Right, because you have said that, right? We are going to do the 150-ton tomb in Ireland next week, and we're also going to do going to do some of those court tombs in Ireland next week as well, particularly. That's what we're going to do next week, and we're going to compare. If I can remember the name of it, because my brain does go a bit addled. The one that we did actually show is the one in County Tyrone. That is known as the Cregan Devetsky Court Tomb in County Tyrone. So we'll do that next week, and we'll compare it with the giant's grave on the Gower. We'll compare that, and we'll do Cregan Devensky and we'll do the 150 tonner in Ireland, and we'll also do the 55 tonner or 50 tonner in Wales next week.
I don't think we've got any burial chambers in Cumbria, have we?
All right, then, we have got burial chambers in Cumbria. We're going to do one or two of them next week.
Yeah.
Are they like with this slab on the top?
You can have ice cream. You can have whatever you like on the top. You can even have apples.
There is a small like kiss tomb over at on the way over to Fairy Steps.
And if we go to Haverick, I'm sure we can find one or two over there.
Yeah. Not on that scale, but
no.
Hang on, there's nothing like that. I'm not saying it's at that scale at Haverick, but you know what I mean. Andy, you've got to put Haverick and Millom in here somehow. We've got to do something about Millom finally.
Yep, definitely.
There's one at where did they find their oldest man in Cumbria? Where was that?
Urswick, yeah.
There's a burial chamber there, a big stone one, but that's the only one that I know of.
On that note, folks, we're going to take a 9-minute break now because Margaret, you've used up some of our break. No, Margaret, you didn't. We'll have a 9-minute break now, and we'll go from there. So, I'll be back in a short while.
Okay.
Right then.
Am I getting obsessive, do you think?
You're on your way to being a good archaeologist. Yeah,
exactly. You're there.
Obsessed. I'm getting to be a nerd.
Oh my God! Adam's just gone out. Adam's just walked off the moon. That's amazing. Right. Okay then, folks.
Spacewalk.
Spacewalk. I'll speak to you about 20 past. Speak
All
to
right
you
then. Bye.
Speak to you then. We'll be back online in 2 minutes, folks. So make sure you got your tea there.
Oh, do you know, it was -2 last night here. -2, and it's nearly May. I had to put an extra duvet on my bed last night. I was so cold. It's just been a really, really long winter, hasn't it? What do you think, Pete? Can't hear you.
Hi, and sexies.
No,
How are
it's
you
not.
all? Let's get
It
back
hasn't
to it.
been too bad here.
Oh, it's been so cold, cold winds.
Hey, just think, Peter and I come down to stay with Peter. I'll stay at Peter as well. We'll keep you warm, Margaret.
Yeah, you're all welcome anytime.
No, you're coming down to me and Peter. We
Oh,
can't be bothered. We're not going to travel up to see
come
you.
up here, come up to our side sometime.
It never rains in Barry. It's a most it's like a holiday resort all the time, isn't it, Pete?
Yep, I called into Cumbria. I called into Braithwaite Farm, which is just outside of.
Is it Keswick?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
Braithwaite, yeah.
yeah.
When was that?
Oh,
Years ago.
a couple of years ago now, yeah. But
Well, if you're ever up this way, you're welcome to stay.
oh,
I've got a
yeah.
spare room.
I was in my motorhome, so I didn't need
Oh,
the
wow.
accommodation. But yeah,
Have you still got that?
yeah.
Can I ask you something? Would I have to share a bed with Peter?
No, I've got 2 spare beds and I've got a bed settee.
You can
Well,
have the
we'll
settee.
I'll bring up Baldrick then.
And I've got a very annoying dog that would just bark at you the whole time. As
Yeah,
look, he's barking now.
Can
Also,
I
my dog's obsessed with food, and he's spotted that I've got a biscuit. So,
how old is the dog?
he's 14, nearly 15.
Oh,
Nearly as old as you.
I don't know what that is in human years. I guess he's in his 80s then, isn't he?
No, dogs can live
7 and
until
it's
about
7 times.
Well, he's in his 80s then.
No, I've known dogs to live until about 22, 23 years old.
Well, his breed, I've met some that are 19 years old.
Wow.
So I'm going to be walking him into my 80s at this rate.
Hang on a minute. You know these standing stones in Edinburgh, right?
Standing stones in Edinburgh.
No, the standing stone that's in a housing estate.
Oh, that one, yeah.
No, this is not the one you're thinking about.
The what? Oh,
No, I found another one.
really?
No, I'm going to show it now. So I wasn't going to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. Let's just show it now. We're back on, guys. Anyway, so we had 1,000 people online now. There's only 3 left. Right. Okay. They were all from British Hidden History Uncensored. Oh God! Oh my God, Adam! If that gets out, it's terrible. I'll be burnt at the stake. Right. Okay. God, we don't want any of those numpties online. Right. Did you? Right. Okay. Let's put share. What we need is Britain's Hidden History. Those are the ones we want online, innit? Right. Okay. Right, and we want Monica Escobar online as well. That's who we want. Well, you don't mess with her, do you? Flipping heck. Right, Margaret, look at this. Look at that. That's not the stone that was in the newspaper.
Oh, no.
Now it says that this itself, this is the K stone is tucked away in a housing estate. So this is another one in a housing estate.
Oh,
this is not the one. This isn't the one I saw.
No, it's
so I've only just put this online, right?
That was a lot posher, that one.
Yeah, that is posher. Do you know the name of the one that we're talking about in the housing estate? The other one?
I did have the article, but let's see if I can find it.
Because that's not the one, is it? Because that is much posher.
That
Yeah, I'm actually a bit. The thing is, what I'm getting at, right, is I wanted to show you this because there's another reason. Not all history and archaeology is out in fields, right? For example, when you go to London, there are bits of the old Roman city wall around, and there's bits of mosaic hanging around, and there's bits of stone hanging around in London. If you've got a map, you can find them. And in York, it's another example where you can find stuff everywhere. And as our wonderful Adam went to Colchester to see the mosaic outside the vape shop, and he failed. But that's a bit of a shame, Adam. We feel for you on that one. What I want us to do, I want us to find that article.
Ravenswood Avenue.
That was nowhere near the one that we come across. So
Ravenswood.
Ravens wood. I hope there's not. I hope there's something not dodgy going on in Ravenswood Avenue.
Damn.
We definitely not at Tunbridge Wells. Strange things happen in Tunbridge Wells. Stone, right? If we type in stone again, folks, we weren't meant to be doing this today, but we're doing it anyway. Oh, there we go. Ravenswood standing stone. So Ravens Avenue. Here we go. That's it. Oh no, is this? Oh, this is the classy article. Ravenswood Avenue. And there it is. There's a bin next to it.
It's nice to give it its own bin, isn't it?
I've got to be honest with you. The problem is, Andy, right? There's no recycling bin for glass, which is separate, so it's not really.
Nah, it's only a little single person one, isn't it? As well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's unacceptable. I think the bin, the stone should be brought in. There we go. It stands at 1.85 meters high, and has a basal diameter of 0.7 meters. The stone is of grey sandstone. It has vertical weathered grooves. And if I tell you what, let's just see if we can get a few more images up there. Here we go. There it is.
That's the one that's been moved a few times, is it?
It's even got its own car.
Yeah, got its own parking space.
There's the parking space for its own car. Oh, shut up, you silly man. And
Why
my
do,
God,
why
it's
do they
what-
venerate it so much now they've moved it several times? It's like
the thing
weird,
is, it's
isn't it?
even got its own abandoned shopping trolley.
Yeah, it's nice railings. Yeah.
Nice railings. Yeah, that's nice railings. Isn't that Claire in the background?
It could be, but don't ask. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah. It looks pretty big, but it's probably really small. Do you know what? I'll just finally show you this before we get on.
But
There they are.
size of a person, isn't it? So,
It is the size of a person, yeah.
They're all laughing at it.
Well, that's not very nice, isn't it?
no.
It's ridiculed by the
Look,
community.
he's taking no notice of the railings and poking it.
And also he's not asking permission to take photographs of it, right?
It's like
And
an
also the
episode of
people-
Doctor Who, isn't it?
The people who
How
people
weird.
who own those houses haven't paid the rent to the stone in years, because that's part of a stone circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Oh God! Basically, I'll just give you a little bit of information on this. You can look it up. But this is hang on a minute. This is megalithic portal. They're quite good. There it is, standing stone in Midlothian, city of Edinburgh. This unusual urban standing stone is sticking out of a pavement surrounded by a small circular iron fence close to a block of flats. It's amazing, isn't it? There's the well, it doesn't matter where the alignment and access is not really important because it's been moved over 100 meters. And doesn't that look great? You can imagine people stubbing out their fags in there.
Yeah, my dog would be drawn to that.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be.
That would go
I'm
in-
That's Ozzy the archaeology dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. Right. So right. So we've done that now, and I'm just reminded that
They don't
Yeah,
put it in
ma-
context, though, do they? They don't say
They
that
don't.
other than it's a housing. It's not really relevant that there are a block of flats next to it. What about other stones? Yeah.
So what I'm going to do, we're going to leave that one now, but maybe what I could do is a little bit more detail. Hang on, one last thing. Here we go. This one. This is the National Monuments Record, and if we go, here we go. A little bit of information finally, and then we'll move on. The monument comprises a prehistoric standing stone. When the stone was originally scheduled in 1938, it was situated in a field about 100 meters south of its present location. Why didn't it stay where it was? It was moved from this position in about 1971 when a new housing scheme was built. Well, surely the stone is being rescheduled now to afford it protection in its new location in a modern urban setting. The stone is set into the pavement. We know all that. The stone was erected over 4,000 years ago, stands 1.85 meters high. What's below the surface, that's why vertically weathered. The area to be scheduled is a circle of 0.7 meters in diameter, right? The metal railings are excluded from the scheduling, and this is all there is. The monument is of national importance as an icon of prehistoric ritual, albeit in a modern urban setting. Although the stone is no longer has archaeological potential, it is a monument with cultural significance, capable of speaking to a modern urban population and worthy of legal protection in its present setting. And the only thing I would say, right, it's a stone that can actually speak. I think that's amazing. On that note, right, we're going to crack on with the lecture. Back to the skull. Anyway, guys. Oh, Andy, right? Can I just mention, Andy? Is there any relevance in that stone at all now? Do you know what I mean?
3D scanning.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to get something from it in the future with modern developments and technology, but not. It's a point of interest, or makes people aware, but academically, no.
And it's just this thing about it's actually being moved. You know,
Yeah.
I've got to be honest with you, right? It's a big stone, right? It could have been. They could have just like altered the slight alignment of the building, which it was in that area and like had it on the corner of a building or in someone's garden, it would have kept its relevance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely.
Anyway, back to this, folks. Otherwise, we're going to be all night again. It's Adam, and he keeps talking. He keeps putting these things into the lecture. Adam's been nothing but trouble since he started these lectures. He's gone. Oh, never mind. His first archaeological excavation, this isn't Adam, but Thurnham, were on the Barrow group of East Yorkshire Wold. So he was also up in East Yorkshire when he directed operations for the York Literary and Philosophical Society. That's amazing that excavations were undertaken for the York Literary and Philosophical Society. The openings were hasty and uncritical. It said that Thurnham intended to finish the excavations quite quickly, and it's quite upsetting that this sort of opened up our sort of understanding Thurnham's excavations. It said that he intended to finish the excavations by noon and fly over to York to excavate more barrows. However, this is speculation. Thurnham began more thorough and systematic barrow diggings in 1853. I think just sort of some of that sort of maybe flightingly going excavating here and there is probably Thurnham trying to get used to what this barrow digging was about. Thurnham began more thorough and systematic barrow digging in 1853. Details of his work appear in several journals, Wiltshire Archaeological Magazine, and so on. So he's excavating in Wiltshire now. He excavated earthen and chambered long barrows, as well as opening a large number of round barrows. Remember, he opened 94 of them. And his operation can perhaps best be described by separate reference to the three that he had actually excavated. And Thurnham's main preoccupation was bone hunting. Now this is interesting that we're thinking about that question, that the question that Margaret asked, right? Was he really drawn to this because of craniology? Was he really drawn to this by bones? Now this is rather interesting, Margaret, if you come into the conversation, Margaret, because before Margaret, people were really interested in the artifacts, right, rather than the bones. So when we look at the Worcus Lucas, we looked at in comparison with the likes of Bateman, and we look at all the other people before that, they had some interest in bones, but this guy was interested in the bones. So then the question is he as interested in the other evidence? Was that what you were trying to get at earlier on, Margaret?
Well, I just presume because he was a surgeon that it was of interest to his job as a surgeon.
Yes. So bone hunting and many of his barrow openings were concerned with the recovery of skeletal material. Some of his diggings had the sole aim of relocating burials recorded by Hoare and Cunnington and reinterring them. So a few details of mound construction are given, apart from curiously mentions of the chiefly area of chalk and the stratum of black earth. So at his early stages, he was more interested in the bones, right? So the point is early archaeology was not as good as it could be before 1853. Now, then when we're thinking about the likes of Wiltshire, again, we're thinking about the earthen long barrows were monuments which especially interested Thurnham, and to which he gave much attention. Now he was excavating in 1855 and 1867. He dug at no less than 22 of the Wiltshire ones. While you're thinking about that, that's not exactly 20 a year, is it? This is 1855, 1867. Over 12 years, he dug 22 barrows. At this minute, he slowed down. So something happened to slow him down. He's slowing down. He's slowing down the number of barrows that he's digging, which is interesting. Some bold Barrow or Barrow likes that he reopened to locate the burials left by Cunnington. Interesting enough, he's looking at barrows that had been excavated by others where they just left all the bones and they took the artifacts. This time he was the one who was going to take the bones. That's interesting. So in other words, he's going. So what we've got, you know, earlier on we looked at Thurnham looking at other work. Now Thurnham's going back for the bones. So where the other people have taken all the artifacts out and described them or may have drawn them or lost them, he has put that information into the bones that he's recovering. So now we're getting a fuller picture of the burials that earlier people had excavated. Of those he worked on, some 9 openings were, in his opinion, successful. So he found the bones. He didn't report fully on the barrows because it was likely that there was nothing in some of the ones he looked at. Remember, he's working at 22. His excavation methods regarding long barrows are only curiously mentioned. One at Wilsford was heavily assaulted in October 1866. Thurman wrote that altogether 16 holes have been dug into this barrow without meeting the primary interment, the hope of which must be abandoned. So that goes to something that we've just said earlier on, that, you know, it's not all about digging these things up completely. If he or other people hadn't found anything, they'd abandon the excavation. So are they actually damaging the archaeology or you know, those questions? The Long Barrow at Winterbourne Stoke crossroads underwent 4 distinct excavations before the presumed primary burial. A crouched skeleton was found 55 foot from the east end at sunset one summer evening. So in other words, Thurman mentions a large excavation at the end of the Tills Head Old Ditch Barrow in Branton Castle in August 1866. His work party made 2 large openings at the extreme east end. So what we're talking about, we're thinking about this guy, his work is okay. He's trying to put stuff together, but he's not a brilliant excavator. He's really much interested in trying to find bones this time. At Winterbourne Stoke, he was looking at a kist, and he found near the back of the he found basically a skull, right? And this hole that he found, which he's describing as a kist, he described as a scoop out of the chalk rock where he found this. So not very descriptive. Thurnham regarded them as ritual pits for deposits of food and drink for the day, or the blood of human victims whose mangled remains appear often to have been buried with the body of the chief in this class of tumuli. He really didn't understand what these barrows were about, but he was really interested in the bones. He's going back to look at the bones again. So in other words, we can't have it all. We're, you know, some excavators are good in the past, some excavators are looking for artifacts. Trying to put the picture together is that people are interested in archaeology for different reasons. This is a discussion that me and Margaret had. As one might expect, his descriptions of the burial deposits found in various monuments, in monuments that the barrows that we find burials are actually quite precise. Where he's finding bones, he's actually starting to get more and more precise in the way he records the archaeological evidence, and in offering us wonderful craniological drawings like the one that we've got in front of us. He would describe some of the excavations in the following vein. Here we go. This is describing the Tills Head East Ditch Barrow. So much were they mingled and so closely packed that it was scarcely possible to regard this as the original place of burial, and it is almost certain that they had experienced a prior interment and had been removed to the spot where they were found after the decay of the soft parts and the separation of the bones. What he's describing is an earlier burial, and what he is describing is really interested in looking at the bones at this point. But this is in the late 1860s. He would be dead in 1873. So one of the things that he was thinking of is that this is rather interesting. When he was looking at long barrows, he made a statement towards the end of the 1860s, and this is rather interesting. Does this ring a bell, folks? This introduced the theory that Long Barrow burials were stored in some other locality before their final interment. So what he's saying, he's found a load of bones in a barrow that seemingly were so disarticulated they must have come from somewhere else, and he was right. Now he's actually started to analyze the bones. Now that would not have been possible because nobody else, well, that's not fair. Lucas and other people had been interested in bones, but people, lots of other archaeologists weren't really interested in bones. Can you remember that description? I'm gonna go back that one of the archaeologists went through a layer of bones with a pickaxe, and I can't remember where that was, but it was one of the other archaeologists that they actually went through, and they just destroyed the human remains because they weren't of relevance. There was a layer of human bones, and they just went through it. But this guy's interested in it. Another site called Norton Bavant. There was great. There were great numbers of bones. He described it, and he noticed that many of the bones of the limbs were absent, judging as to their proper number from that of the skulls. So we were seeing skulls, and we were seeing that there was a lot of stuff missing, right? So basically meaning that these bodies had to have come from somewhere else. Those sites that he's describing that these bodies had come from, I would describe as causewayed enclosures, which we haven't done yet. We mentioned the site Windmill Hill, where there's a causewayed enclosure site. It's saying that there was a pot found at Windmill Hill amongst the mass of bones. Thurnham carefully checked the inhumation and the pot. He said that the inhumation lacked lots of bones. It was apparently the first time that any observer had realized that some Long Barrow bones were incomplete, a deficiency now believed in part to suggest the abstraction of certain long bones from the tombs for ritual or magical purposes, hence their presence in the ditches of certain causewayed camps in southern England, or that they originated from those causewayed enclosures and then they went to Long Barrow sites. So Thurnham is very much interested in the bone detail. Now, thinking again about Thurnham was concerned almost to the point of obsession, that point we made earlier on. He was obsessed with the skull human sacrifice theory, which is a bit of a shame. So what we're finding is that Thurman is actually finding a number of skulls, and he's saying he's starting to offer that there's another reason why we're finding all these skulls is because the bodies had been in some kind of sacrificial state, and the skulls were gathered together, which he was wrong, but some archaeologists still believe that today. With regard to earthen long barrows, in 5 of these mounds and in the previous barrows, Bronze Age barrows that he'd excavated, not the Neolithic long barrows, he found broken skulls, the owners of which he felt had been sacrificed at the death of a chief. He expressed the hope that he could show the long barrows to be the tombs of chieftains. Now, that's unfortunate, because that idea that long barrows were used for chieftains and senior members of society are still theories that are purported around by archaeologists today, which had been expressed by Thurnham in the 1860s, which is unfortunate because 150 years later, people still believe this theory. It's not a theory that I go with. He remarked, I hence conclude that the skeletons were skulls of those of human victims emulated to be included on the occasion of the burial of the chief. However, there are convincing reasons to account for skulls found by Thurnham. Significant, this phenomenon only relates to disarticulated burials. Damage to the skulls could have occurred during disinterment or collection before reburial. Alternatively, the collapse of internal wooden mortuaries in there could have led to breakages, damaging the bones as they disintegrated in the barrows that were actually disintegrating themselves. There is little conclusive evidence to support Thurnham's theory of this sacrificial thing, but people still believe it today. Now, what we feel is that Thurnham started to learn, and he started to understand, and he started to move forward with these ideas of understanding the archaeology of the landscape. Now, what we've got to think about Thurnham with lots of his work is that, yes, he is very much interested in the bones. He is very much interested in recording the bones. And Thurnham went on to excavating large numbers of other sites. For example, he excavated at Belus Nap. You know, he excavated he actually come across false entrances at monuments such as Belus Nap. And interestingly, Adam, here's an answer to a question you answered a few weeks ago. He discussed false entrances at Belus Nap, and he also found a false entrance at a site known as Rod Martin and Bow Hill and Nymphfield. So there are other sites with these false and blind entrances. This is rather interesting. He's actually first found these false entrances. Remember the false entrances? You have false entrance at the beginning of a tomb, and there would be no burials behind them. Well, what he said, he remained unsure as the purpose of these false entrances, but he said that they formed a monument rather than part of the tomb properly, so-called, a place where certain funeral rites were performed, and he may have been right. So even though Thurman is primarily interested in bones and he's making mistakes, he is actually recording the bones, and he is actually recording some features of these monuments that hitherto we had not really understood, like the blind entrances at Belus Nap and Rod Martin at Bow Hill at Nymphfield. Thurnham commented on external structures of long barrows, 2 long barrows, after digging at their bases. He found 3 or 4 courses of dry walling. And interestingly enough, the dry walling is something that we find at other sites, such as Tinkinswood Burial Chamber, such as Belus Nap, and Tinkinswood Burial Chamber we'll look at next week. Certain broken skulls found in the chambers of some chambered long barrows, which he investigated, led him to return about this sacrifice theory. The Gloucestershire chambered barrows proved prolific in interments. Thurnman records a total of 70 burials at Hetty Heggs Tump, Nymphfield, Rod Martin and Belus Nap, and 30 burials at Belus Nap, 12 at Nymphfield, 13 at Rod Martin and 15 at Hetty Heggs Tump. Some of these sites we may actually come across again. So he's actually recording the numbers of bones and types of individuals in these barrows, in some cases for the first time. And it starts to make you wonder why other people haven't been interested in bones to the degree of the likes of Thurmanton. What is actually archaeology about? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. These things are running around our minds now, trying to work out what's going on, trying to work out all these different things.
Oh,
yeah, go on.
Do you think he might have been a tutor in anatomy in skulls? Maybe had students and he gave them a skull each to discover things.
It would, to be honest with you, we need to go much deeper into Thurman's mindset, but he would have obviously have taught because he was a medical doctor. This is what medical doctors did back then. They had audiences. They did teach. So yes, the answer, whether it's directly related to this, I don't know. But one of the things that this is rather interesting. Listen to this one. Several of the barrows that he was digging were barrows that were excavated by Hoare and Cunnington. And Hoare and Cunnington had basically left the skeletons behind. Hoare had written that the skeleton was one of the most perfect interments he had ever met with. He had uncovered every bone and was enabled to leave it unmoved and even undisturbed. And what was interesting was Thurman wanted to go back there, and he knew that Cunnington had been there because there was one of Cunnington's plaques there that said it had been opened in 1804. So in other words, Margaret, what we're doing, we're getting a full picture. This guy is going back to look at these bones that have been described, and Cunnington leaving a set of funeral remains there. And actually, there's something else, Margaret. I've just thought about it. You know when you hear archaeologists saying, "Oh, we're going to go back. We're going to leave archaeology for later generations to excavate because they might be interested or know better what to do." Cunnington started that off because Thurman went back and looked at one of Cunnington's pieces of work, right? This is the site. If I can work this, this is Overton Hill. No, not Overton's Hill. This is Morgan's Hill. This is Thurman goes back and he basically excavates one of William Cunnington's excavations, 1804, with a set of human remains, because it's almost as if Cunnington knew that other people might be interested in his work, so he goes back, and it's full circle if we know what we're getting at. So Thurman would almost continually come across the work of other individuals. Like Bateman, Thurman often gave the measurements of long bones and occasional figures of skulls. Sometimes Barrow measurements were noted, but few details of mound materials were felt worthy of notice because Thurman was interested in the human remains and not always necessarily interested in everything else. Thurman's theories of dating of the Wiltshire round barrows, interestingly, back to Wiltshire, it's said are of interest. Now this is gonna be sounding of interest. So if we go to where's that illustration? Where's that illustration? Right, go to this one. Right, okay. This is by the way not the work. This is the work of a captain. This is Captain Francois Dubois Lucas. We started off with Lucas. This is in 1865, right? So just thinking about this sketch, the dry stone walling we've mentioned already. This is by Lucas, 1865, and again, where is this? This is Buxton. And so what? Obviously, Lucas is going to be interested in lots of things in there, right? But what Thurman is going to be interested in is those sets of human remains, and he's the one who's going to draw those sets of human remains accurately, anatomically, like this. Okay. And look at this here. We're not going to see this by the likes of Lucas or the likes of, we might see something similar to Lucas, but we're not going to see Thurman doing this because Thurman is directly interested in this. And by the way, human remains, right? Thurman would draw that properly. So so if we go back to this again, I know this is actually looking at the workers, Lucas, but what we're going to mention now a moment is what our friend Thurman felt about dates. So here we go. This is what he said about the Barrows of Wiltshire. This is dating about the Barrows of Wiltshire. He felt them to be probably Belgic, from the continent. Beakers in general, he believed, could be supposed to belong to a late period. Now, was he right? Beakers cremations. Elsewhere, he wrote that beakers were such as are usually met with in the most modern circular British tumuli. He got that right because the round circular tumuli are later than the long barrows, which are of Neolithic date. So he's got that right. So it's great. We've got this guy who's got loads of things wrong. He's done a bit of digging here. He's not recorded. He's screwed up, whatever, right? But his focus on bones is actually paying results. And obviously, when Margaret, we go back to his studies comparing the skulls, the prehistoric, the Roman, and the Anglo-Saxon skulls with the tumuli he's working on. In Wiltshire, he decided that two separate tribes held sway. One in the northern part of the the other holding the south. That occupying the North Wiltshire Downs, he wrote appearing to consist of the Dubuni of Ptolemy, mentioned by Ptolemy, who clustered around their Aboriginal name fame at Avebury. The Dubuni is not actually too far wrong. So in what he's doing, this is something else as well. We're covering a lot today. In a moment, what he's done, he's looked at the work of Ptolemy, who's describing in prose the Dubuni, the Belgi tribe, the Atrebates, and all the rest of it. The Dubuni come sort of from that area of sort of northern Wiltshire, right? That's interesting. And the Belgi are sort of in the south. So he's actually putting history into the archaeology. And guess what? He's got something right, but unfortunately, the dating's slightly out, because the Dubuni would have been slightly later than the Bronze Age barrows that he's looking at, and the Belgi people would have been slightly later. But what he's doing is differentiating the differences in people that would have actually happened in the Bronze Age anyway. In South Wiltshire, he's saying about the Belgi were in control. These last, he continued, brought with them from the continent a more advanced civilization, probably erected Stonehenge, well, and doubtless maintained a more intimate traffic with Gaul than did their northern neighbours. He's not got the Stonehenge thing right, or he's got it wrong. Has he got it right? Has he got it wrong? What we're talking about, what we are talking about, is he's talking about people with ideas coming over from the continent, influencing how people are being buried in the Bronze Age, the Beaker people, the changes within that world, the changes of skills, technology, everything. So he's identifying that, which is very interesting. And this is before radiocarbon dating. And he's identifying this by looking at the human remains. It's quite strange that other people hadn't identified this before him. This is in the 1860s, late 1860s. This is when Pengelly's excavating at Buxton. Brixham, Buxton. Is Pengelly's excavated Brixham in 1865. Another reason, Thurman, why the South Wiltshire tribes were more advanced than those of the North lay in the fact that their barrows were more elaborately formed with different types. Well, he's not too far wrong. They were a little bit more elaborately formed in the South. So he's differentiating that, which is absolutely great. Now, what he wrote in Archaeologia, he wrote very much about how he started to write about his excavations and the layers. He was starting to write about layers, which is very important. So if we go to this is rather interesting. This is actually not one of his plans, but this might be a plan that might be put together of a tumuli in Dorset from 1866. So this is what he wrote. Our plan has been to dig a hole 10 or 12 feet square in the center of the mound. Not this one, but they will use this as a thing. And to sink a shaft from the top to the bottom until the undisturbed chalk rock is reached and the original interment disclosed. Now he was writing about layers. Thurman, this method preserved the external form of the barrow, though at the expense of any understanding of the mound stratification and the high probability of missing subsequent barrows. What he was interested in, he was interested in preserving, in a way, if he makes any mistakes, which he was, right? So other people could come along and excavate. So in other words, he's done what Cole Hall did in 1804, with one of the sites that he unraveled, finding Cole Hall's human remains. And then what he's then doing is he's basically saying, right, okay, in future generations, somebody might come along and dig, and they might be a bit better skilled than I am. Love it. Indeed, he criticized contemporary diggers in neighbouring Dorset, which we'll do next time when we do barrow diggers, for their insistence in following the much more costly and tedious method of cutting a trench through the entire mound, which he wasn't for, as this defaced the form and shape of the barrow, and except in rare cases, such an extensive section cannot be the requisite for the full disclosure of the contents of the tumulus. So in other words, if he didn't find what he found, that was it. and he wasn't destroying the mound. He rightly castigated modern barrow openers who failed to restore the mounds they dug. And he basically said that these people were plundering. They were plundering the landscape. Barrow plundering at Dorset, at a place called Colliford Tree. What he would say, they were digging into them and just leaving them open. He said, you can't do this. And that's another thing. Okay, we can be critical of Thurman a lot, but we can say, well, what he believed was that when you're digging an archaeological site, you've got to cover it up. You've got to cover it back up. You've got to fill the hole, right? And this is what he said about Colliford Tree in Dorset, right? This is what he said. We're coming to the end. A wide trench had been dug through it on one side from the summit, and the rubble which had been thrown out had not been replaced. Another subject of regret was the fact that though, as we were told by the neighbouring rustics, human remains with pottery and certain other artefacts were found in the Barrow, no authentic account of the exploration had, so far we could learn, been put to print. So in other words, he was basically saying that those Dorset diggers are shysters. They're not doing a good job, particularly at Colliford Tree. So, Peter, when you're looking for reports of archaeological remains in Dorset, in some places you're not going to find anything because they never recorded what they found. Speaking of his digging operation, Thurman reminisced on pleasant days passed in an active exercise on the breezy downs, where if, like the Eastern monarch in the apologue, we have found a basilisk, we like him have found healthful recreation suited to our taste, the results of which are not, we think, entirely without value and interest. So what he's saying we're loving digging. Another point that we discussed earlier on a personal level, Thurman appears to have been rather stuffy, self-centered, stubborn, and long-winded, though doubtless redeeming qualities were also present. In other words, he was obsessed with digging bones. When he left York for Devizes, a certain Thomas Brushfield wrote, rather unkindly, that he had departed to join his relatives at the Wiltshire County Asylum. Yet later, the same correspondent could state, after Thurman's wedding, that if marriage improves me as much as it has done him, I shall have cause to be thankful. Brushfield could also note, after one conversation with the doctor, that the latter would be very much instrumental for understanding the Anglo-Saxon. What we're gonna say now is that we're gonna end this in a moment. A certain this guy here, we got this guy. This is Joseph Davis, a friend of Bateman and Thurman's. He worked with Thurman, right, in this pioneer study of ancient British crania. His home in Staffordshire was so packed with specimens that the local called it the scullery. This is Barnard Davis. He had loads of skulls, just like our guy Thurman. Relations with Davis, his co-author on the crania, were at times a little stiff. Davis, there he is, once commented on his friend Thurman, the distance of his personal manners, which those of us who are aware of those own peculiarities would be the first to excuse. Yet he also wrote of Thurman, his is a peculiar mind. He appears to see nothing but himself in the present and nothing but himself in the future. I'm persuaded it is not a failure with him, but a sort of instinct. I am frequently obliged to oppose an unrelenting firmness with compliance would be much more gratifying to me. Like other men of note, Thurman had his personal oddities and foibles, but these detract little from the reputation of the enduring nature of his pathfinding studies. And closing this lecture today, Thurman, and there is Thurman again, finally, great study of tumuli in archaeologia, contained much useful information. on various collections of Barrow relics by contemporary excavators, and he wrote about other people before he wrote about stuff before he put the bones with it. He saw the many urns from the devices Barrow supposedly safely deposited and carefully preserved in the Museum of Bristol Institute. It was to be regretted, he wrote, that they are failing that they are falling to pieces and in danger of being quite lost. Thurman was worried about the artifacts in these museums. They needed to be studied. He needed to get them out there and publish them with the bones. Thurman apparently traveled through the length and breadth of England, examining collections, and he mentions pottery and other grave goods amassed by many well-known diggers of the time. Finally, in retrospective, it is impossible to escape the conclusion that however highly we place Thurman as an interpreter of Barrows and their contents, as an actual excavator, his methods were of a retrogressive nature on those in contemporary use elsewhere. But he was very much wanting to put archaeology together with the bones and the history, which he managed to achieve, bringing us archaeology, which were in cabinets that others hadn't studied before. And I would say about Thurman, and finally, people used to say about Thurman that Thurman was like me, being obsessed by history and archaeology more than our own families. And sometimes he is right. Other times they are wrong. We are human, but we can be obsessed by archaeology nonetheless. So that's where we will close today. And what we're going to do is, Adam, I need a quick chat with you at the end. Don't forget, I mentioned that we need to start paying the class fees. Other than that, let's see if there are any questions. I know Pat left us a little bit earlier on, and I think I don't know what Pete's doing, but he's standing there. David, anything you want to say, David?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
Night to all.
Oh, night, David.
David.
Have a good night and enjoy. Make sure you have yourself a cup of tea.
Hi,
And good to
David.
see you back with your
Bye now.
night, David.
Bye.
Peter. Night, David. Night, David. Peter, go on.
No, that was fab. Thank you.
Yeah, he didn't even open his mouth. What about you, Pete?
No, thanks. No, fine. Good.
Okay, no doubt I'll see you tomorrow morning, Pete.
Yeah.
What about you, Anne? I know I've blown your mind. Anything you'd like to say? Have we really blown your mind tonight, Anne?
I think it's been really interesting, and there's been so much, so many topics covered. It's really, I don't know, I'm hardly keeping awake. I'm just kind of so tired. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. Who else have we got? We've got Peter.
Me again.
Yeah, because we did the other Peter. He spoke with it and didn't even open his mouth. Yeah, go on.
No, that was great. As Anne said, loads of stuff covered. So it's been really interesting.
Good. Dorset next time we do Barrow Diggers. We might give
Kevin.
Get
it right.
Yeah, but the Dorset Diggers are quite. Yeah. Anyway, Andy.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Right, and finally, I'm looking forward to cutting up my final fig roll and just taking the outside stuff off and eating the middle. Right, Margaret. Hasn't Margaret got beautiful hair today? It's usually ragged and torn.
I've just watched it. Thank you for that.
No, it's a compliment. It's a compliment, love. It's fine. Go on.
That drawing of the skull looked enormous. It must have been from an old long barrow where they had big heads. It just looks huge, doesn't it? It doesn't look in proportion at all. Well,
craniologically, this was a cranial guy, and his work is renowned. So working with Davis, yes.
Your head. Feel the back of your head. It's not elongated like that. Mine's flat.
Actually, we'll go back to that image a minute. And we'll and
it's like a great big egg shape.
I was looking at a long time ago. Egyptian were a different shape with the bigger piece
Yeah,
at the back.
the New Kingdom, Mark and Arton. Yeah.
Yeah.
The back of my head is flat. It's not a
Yeah.
great big egg shape like that.
But if you take the spine away, it changes the shape considerably.
No,
Yeah.
not to that extent. I think it's slightly exaggerated.
Oh, now come on! You're really in dark territory criticizing Thurman.
Did he? So I was going to say, did he actually do the drawings himself?
Look, that's huge.
Hmm.
Yeah, but his spine had to come down.
Yeah, where that bottom nodule
With
is where
the
the spine
bottom
comes
part
out.
filled that.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think that skulls are different shapes. They're different,
There are different ones. You're right.
know.
Yeah.
That is really elongated at the back, I think.
It could have been Thurman or Davis, but these were the two doing the work.
The detail is extraordinary in the drawing, isn't it?
Really
Yeah, it is.
beautiful.
It is
It's a
beautiful.
blooming big head.
Well, it's got to be a woman then. I've known loads of women like that, big heads. Right, sorry, did I say that, Andy? I'm going to be burnt at the stake by saying that.
Yeah. Doesn't have a very pronounced brow though, so you could be right.
Yeah, it's definitely a woman.
A woman, no.
It's got to be a woman from Millham. You know what they're like? They got hairs on their chest.
Great set of teeth.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a Millham woman. Got to be.
Are male skulls and female skulls different?
Sometimes.
Okay.
There are no men left in Millham because the women have eaten them.
Sometimes the male brow has it slightly more pronounced, but other than that, there's not a lot of difference.
Well, Darwin thought we were a different species altogether.
Well, he might be
people
right.
from man's side.
Men and women, he said women were a completely different species.
Yeah, Venus and Mars. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I'm going to say good night. I'm tired.
Anne.
Good night, Anne. Good to see you.
And I'll see you next week, Annie. Give our love to Gina, and we'll get this over to her. Right. So, who else have we got left now? We've hardly got anyone else. Right. So, David, Pete, I'm going to see you tomorrow. I want a quick chat with you, Adam. And if the other Pete wants to stay on, then fine. If everyone said everything, Margaret, Peter, Adam, Peter, and Andy. That's great. I want a quick chat with Adam anyway. Anyone else want to say anything else before we finished?
No. Good night. Good night,
all. Good to see you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, Adam. And like the other Peter as well. There we go. He's gone.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh, right. I'll get this off record now. I'm just going to finish my do there. Right. So, everybody watching online, thank you very much for watching. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat box, they may do so now. If anyone's got any questions, we had a few people watching online. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Join button down below, the blue join button. Press join. £1.99 a month, a bargain. Anyway, many thanks for watching online, and we're going to stop this recording now. I'm just going to look in the chat box. Anything? Nobody puts anything in the chat box. No, that's it. Right. Okay. Then. Many thanks for watching online, everybody. Thank you very much. And that's and including the Britain's Hidden History, Ross Brodstock's best and only original page, and there's no other one out there. And go over and watch Monica's thing on the King Arthur Doodah and Alan Wilson.